So again, tonight is the final message. I've entitled it The Mark of the Beast, Part 3. So if you haven't heard the other two sermons, I encourage you to listen to them online. The Mark of the Beast, Part 1 and 2. And the whole series is online. The series is entitled The Promise of His Coming, looking at prophecies of the last days. Tonight, I'm going to begin way back in the book of Genesis. If you'd like to turn back to Genesis chapter 11, the first book of your Bible. Genesis chapter 11, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 9. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. Literally, that's translated, the same earth was one lip and used one set of words, is the literal translation there from the Hebrew. So it's a time when everybody was able to communicate with each other. The whole earth had the same language and the same words. And it came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. This is one of the scriptures that apparently tradition says that John Rockefeller read and decided to go over to the Middle East to look for oil in Iraq, this is ancient Iraq, ancient Babylon, and he struck oil there and became one of the wealthiest men in history, because they found tar for mortar. If they had tar, they had oil. Verse 4, and they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city, and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they begin to do, and now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down, and there confuse or confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. God was not impressed with their building and their city, and especially not their tower. God had commanded Noah in just the prior couple of chapters after the flood to go and populate the earth. As a matter of fact, God gave this command to mankind after the flood in Genesis 9:7. God says, "And as for you, be fruitful and multiply, and populate the earth abundantly, and multiply in it." And so God had given them a direct command. They were not to stay there where the ark where the ark of Noah had landed in Mount Ararat. They were not to remain there. They were to go and populate the whole earth. But instead of doing this, they all had one language. They came up with a strategy to build a city and then build a tower to the stars. Again, verse 4 says, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city, and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." Well, they were supposed to be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth, to populate the whole earth, and they were disobeying God's command even immediately after the flood, after Noah and his family had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and people began to congregate and people began to propagate there after the flood, and immediately they want to worship the stars of the heavens. We see from history, every ancient civilization built towers like this, called ziggurats, called pyramids, called temples. It's interesting, you could look at the Mayans, you could look at the Aztecs in Mexico and in South America, you could look at the Egyptians in the Middle East. You could see this story here. You could go over to India, you could go over to China, and you will see that the peoples of the earth continued even after they were scattered, after their language was confounded and God confused their languages. They couldn't continue this building project because they couldn't communicate with each other. They went to other parts of the world and they started building the same things. They started building the same sorts of ziggurats or towers that were lined up astrologically through astrology to divine the future, to contact the stars, and to have communication with the fallen angels. And so this is really the beginning of astrology. It was stopped by God from the beginning. It's been forbidden by God. We've done some teaching on astrology and witchcraft and the occult. And I just read another article in the LA Times last week, don't have the time to go into it tonight, where they interviewed all of these 20-somethings and 30-somethings, and all of these young people have forsaken Christianity, they've forsaken Judaism or whatever religion they were raised in, the religion of their home, and they are now into astrology. They are now into New Age, they're into meditation, they're into yoga, they're into tarot card readings, they're into crystals, and that's what this article was all about. This is the first generation in American history where the majority of the people do not actually identify as Christians. This generation overwhelmingly, the 20s and 30-year-olds, basically the millennials and below, do not identify as Christians. And that's the first time since they've started taking records of this in our country, where they say they do not believe in Christianity and they do not identify really as any real one religion. They kind of take smorgasbord. They take pieces of all the religions to kind of form this New Age theology. But it started way back here in the Bible, in the book of Genesis. This idea of man saying, "Let us build for ourselves a city, and whose tower will reach to heaven. Let us make ourselves a name, lest we be scattered over the whole face of the earth." Verse 3, let us make bricks. It's all about me, myself, and I, you notice. It's not about God. It's not about God's will. It's not about God's commandments. They have no regard for God. They're like, we're just going to do what we want to do here. We don't care that God told us to be fruitful and multiply and populate the earth. We're staying here and we're building a tower to the heavens so that we will have a name for ourselves. And you know that this is the same way that Satan is revealed to us in the Bible as Lucifer, that he said, "I will be like the Most High. I will ascend above the stars of the heavens," speaking about the other angels. "I will be equal with God," basically. I will. It's all about me, myself, and I. And this has started in man's history way back from the beginning. Instead of "thy will be done," it's "my will be done." And that's really the difference between Christianity and every other religion really that's out there, is that God commands us to serve Him. God commands us to obey Him. God commands us to follow His rules. And every other religion gives you some twisted version of basically "do what you want shall be the whole of the law." And so there's nothing new under the sun. Now, astrology is forbidden by God, and astrology is not astronomy. When you go out at night and you look at the stars, and thank God we could still see the stars here in Tehachapi, because they can't see the stars down in Los Angeles anymore or these other big cities. There's light pollution to the degree where they can't see the Milky Way galaxy. They can't see the Little Dipper on most nights and so forth. We're blessed up here. We don't have that light pollution, so we could see the stars. And when you're going out looking at the stars and you see the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, and maybe you're really savvy and you could pick out the signs of the zodiac in the stars that are up there, the Virgo and the Leo and the Gemini and the others. The stars are up there, and God has used the stars as a means of really people being able to transport themselves over the oceans. They traveled over the oceans by using the stars. And if it was really cloudy or really stormy or daytime and they couldn't see the stars, a lot of times, especially the first explorers, they didn't know where they were going. So God put in the stars like a map, like a chart that people could navigate the earth. And so there's a value to it. And if you could pick out the signs of the zodiac, good for you. I can't find all those signs of the zodiac when I look up at the stars, but God put those there, and man has kind of found these symbols and so forth. That's not astrology. That's called astronomy. And astronomy is the study of the astros, or the study of the stars and the heavens. Astrology is a worship of the stars and a divining of the future by looking to the stars to determine your future. And ultimately, people who enter into astrology end up contacting the spirit realm, and they end up coming into communion and communication with the stars, the fallen stars, which are the demons. Astrology is defined by Wikipedia as this: astrology is a pseudoscience that claims to divine information about human affairs and terrestrial events by studying the movements and relative positions of celestial objects. Astrology has been dated to at least the 2nd millennium BC and has its roots in the calendrical systems used to predict seasonal shifts and to interpret celestial cycles as signs of divine communications. Many cultures have attached importance to astronomical events, and some, such as the Hindus, the Chinese, and the Maya, developed elaborate systems for predicting terrestrial events from celestial observations. Western astrology, one of the oldest astrological systems still in use, can trace its roots to the 19th to 17th century BC Mesopotamia. Interesting, this is where the Tower of Babel was, ancient Mesopotamia, from which it spread to ancient Greece, Rome, the Arab world, and eventually Central and Western Europe. Contemporary Western astrology is often associated with systems of horoscopes that purport to explain aspects of a person's personality and predict significant events in their lives based on the positions of celestial objects. The majority of professional astrologers rely on such systems. And so it is forbidden to the Christian to read horoscopes to divine your future. It is forbidden to the Christian to go to tarot card reading to try and figure out who you're going to marry or what, if you're going to make your fortune or what have you. These things are really at its roots. It is the occult. That's what it is. It's the study of the occult, and ultimately it is the way that people contact fallen angels or demons, is through the practice of astrology. I've heard it, said, well, if you really look at, a Gemini, they really do kind of have two different personalities. Or if you look at this person, they really are kind of like the Leo or the Virgo or whatever. And I think there's one way to solidly answer this, that it's a bunch of nonsense once and for all. You could have two identical twins, or a set of identical twins born at exactly the same moment, exactly the same day, of exactly the same month, which would make them exactly the same astrological zodiac sign, and they could be exact opposites, nothing like one another. Two identical twins from the same sperm and the egg, their DNA is the same, and yet they couldn't be more different. They are complete opposites. How does the horoscope explain that? Because everybody is supposed to be like this if you're born during this, zodiac sign. Under this zodiac sign, you're like this. No, it's a bunch of nonsense. It's like reading a fortune from one of the Chinese cookies, the fortune cookies. You could make it mean whatever you want it to mean. It doesn't mean it's true. It's not true. But if you put your faith in that word that's written on that little slip of paper inside of your fortune cookie and you want to believe it and you're looking to see it fulfilled in your life, guess what? You're probably going to think somehow this is a prophecy for you. The same thing is true with the horoscopes. It is not true. It's a lie from the devil from the beginning to deceive people and to get people off track to not worship the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to turn people away from the worship of the true God and to begin to worship devils and demons. And so this is where we are here this evening. Is I wanted to start here with this because I believe that the mark of the beast has everything to do with rebuilding an electronic version of the Tower of Babel. As a matter of fact, at this time, today, you can communicate with anyone in the world right now, practically instantaneously, with the technology of the internet, with different apps and different programs that are available. I could speak my words that I'm speaking right now, and it could be translated halfway around the world into some European language, French or German. It could be translated all the way around the world to Mandarin Chinese or into Arabic in the Middle East. Everybody who wants to now can communicate with everyone else in the world practically instantaneously. There may be a little bit of a delay with the technology transcribing your words into another language. But I remember there was one time I was somewhere and there was a Chinese business owner and we were trying to communicate. We didn't understand each other. And she pulled out an app and she had me speak into the app English, and the app translated it right on her phone into Chinese. Then she typed in Chinese her answer and it was translated right into English instantaneously. So this is what Satan has wanted from that time until now. When God confounded man's language, it was so that man would not get together and begin to worship the stars of the heavens again. And yet that's exactly what we are living in within our generation. Within the last 10 years even of human history, you now have this technology possible where you have an electronic version of everyone being able to speak the same language, and man is going to use this communication and use this ability to communicate with one another to organize, to become one people, to have one government with one political leader who's going to be the Antichrist, one currency so that everybody will be able to participate in the economy no matter where they are in the world. There'll be one currency. It will be an electronic currency, which will ultimately be placed into the mark of the beast that you cannot buy or sell if you don't have this mark. It's going to be one religion. The Bible calls the religion the whore of Babylon. It's a false church. It's a prostitute church that Satan and the false prophet and the Antichrist are going to push upon mankind. So you're going to have one language. You're going to have one people. No more sovereignty. No more sovereign nations. All that's going to be the thing of the past. We'll all be just people of planet Earth, citizens of planet Earth, Earth citizens instead of American citizens or French citizens or British citizens or Ethiopian citizens, Chinese citizens. One people, no boundaries, one language, one government, one ruler, one religion. And the Bible predicted all of this thousands of years ago. Now, worshiping the stars of heaven have always been, in the scriptures, have always been associated with astrology and witchcraft. It's been referred to as basically the occult, and it is forbidden. The stars are the angels. If you need a scripture to back that up, Job chapter 38, verse 4 says this. I'll read it to you. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? This is God asking the rhetorical questions to Job. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who set its measurements, since you know? Or who stretched the line on it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. And so God is giving us a little bit of history here, that when he was beginning to lay the foundation of the earth, like a builder would snap a line and lay a cornerstone and sink bases, God is saying, where were you when I did all of this to plant the earth here and make it what it is? Create it and then build it and then fill it. And he says, and the morning stars were there. They sang together, and all the sons of God, Ben Ha-Elohim, speaks of angels. The sons of God as angels. All the sons of God shouted for joy. So the stars, the morning stars who are singing together, are the angels. And this is before the fall. Apparently, because it says all of the sons of God shouted for joy. So that would probably have even included Lucifer before he rebelled against God. So the stars are angels. The fallen stars are devils or demons. In Luke chapter 10, verse 18, Jesus says, I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. So Satan fell at one point, and Jesus says, I was there. I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Turn to Revelation chapter 12. Revelation 12 tells us when Satan swept a third of the stars into rebellion with him. When he rebelled, when he fell, he took a third of the angels with him. Revelation chapter 12, verse 3. And another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 crowns. We've already looked at that and identified that from a message a few weeks ago. Verse 4 says, and his tail, this is the dragon's tail, the dragon is Satan, his tail swept away a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. So we know that the stars are the angels. We know that Satan fell and Jesus saw him fall. We know that when Satan fell, he didn't fall alone. He convinced 1/3 of the angels to come with him and to rebel against God. And when the rebellion was made known, these demons were cast out of heaven, or they were cast down to the earth. It says in verse... skipping to verse 7. And there was war in heaven, Revelation 12:7. Michael and his angels, Michael is the good angel, the archangel, one of the leaders of the good angels. Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels waging war. And they were not strong enough. And there was no longer a place found for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And so that's the fall. That's the fall of the angelic realm. At least 1/3 of the angelic realm fell with Satan. Now, it is interesting that all of these ancient peoples were building what? Towers to the stars, all the way to heaven, trying to contact these beings who revealed themselves as gods, who revealed themselves as aliens from another planet, who revealed themselves to man as enlightened ones who could teach you science, who could teach you religion, who could teach you mathematics. Some of these civilizations discovered pi, the formula for pi, 1,000 years before the Western scientists were able to discover the formula for pi within mathematics and geometry. They were building these ziggurats or these towers or these pyramids in perfect proximity to the astrological signs in heaven, lining them up with the different signs of the zodiac and so forth. How did they have the knowledge to do this? These are primitive peoples. Some of them, barely had written languages. And they tell you how they did it. They said the gods came down from the skies, and the gods taught them these truths. But this is forbidden by the God who created those fallen beings. This is forbidden by the God of the Bible. This is a demon worship to its core. You remember I told you that the pentagram, which is the sign of Satanism, is what? It's an upside down star. Why is it an upside down star? We think it looks like a goat head and all of this is kind of creepy and weird, although it's very popular now. The pentagram is very popular today, not associated with evil anymore. Why is it a goat's head? With the horns and then the thing sticking out and then the chin down. Well, if you turn it around, it is a star that is upside down. Why does Satan identify Satanism with the star that's upside down? Because he swept a third of the stars with him when he took them in his rebellion with his tail, and they fell upside down, as it were, symbolically to the earth from heaven. Satan here is also, not only is he cast out of heaven at this point, and there's this war that's going on in heaven, but he's called the accuser of the brethren in the next verse, in Revelation 12:10. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, who accuses them before our God day and night, and they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony, and they did not love their life even to the death." Verse 12, "For this reason rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, knowing that he only has a short time." And so we don't know exactly when this happened. The Bible, heaven is outside of space and time and so forth. And so obviously there's demons. Obviously there have been demons around since Satan fell. So the fall of the 1/3 of the angels was thousands of years ago at least, from our calendar. And it happened in heaven where there is no time to mark it. But Satan still has access at this point to the throne of God. How do we know that? Because we read in Job that Satan came to accuse Job before God. In Job chapter 1 it tells us this, and in Job chapter 2 it tells us this. And so at this point, before the tribulation period, or perhaps the great tribulation period, the last 3.5 years of this era of history, Satan is still allowed access to the throne of God, apparently. He's still able to accuse us. And you know what, guys? For Satan to accuse you, he doesn't even have to make anything up. All he has to do is tell God the truth about you and the truth about me, because we're all sinners. And so he is the accuser of the brethren. He accuses us day and night before the throne of God. It's who he is. It's what he does. He slanders. He accuses. He is a liar and he's a deceiver. But he doesn't have to lie about the things he accuses us of, because we're all sinners and we all fall miserably short of God's standard of perfection, sinless perfection. Thank God that we have an advocate. We have an adversary that's there accusing the brethren day and night, but thank God for Jesus, that we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous, who makes intercession for us before the throne of God, the scriptures say, day and night. Jesus is there at the right hand of the Father. Satan, no doubt, is there at the left hand of the Father accusing the brethren, and Jesus is advocating for us. He is defending us, and he's basically telling the Father This one is mine. I died for this one. I shed my blood for that one. Yes, they're fallen. Yes, they're sinful. But Father, I paid the price for their sins. And so there is this going on apparently in heaven all the time until the point where they are actually cast down out of heaven, have no access to heaven again, and Satan is cast down to the earth. It is likely that that is when the Great Tribulation begins and Satan actually takes possession of the body of the Antichrist and begins to rule through that man. And he's full of wrath because he knows that his time is short. So we are building with our technology today a new electronic version of the Tower of Babel, where basically we have one language, all the world can communicate, and the rise will be, this will result in the rise of the Antichrist, who will then demand to be worshipped by everyone as God himself. He will declare himself to be God, as we looked at on Sunday, and he will demand to be worshipped as God, which is what Satan has always wanted and he still wants. He wants to be worshipped as God. Beware of all the alien stuff out there, guys, because it's going like crazy. The aliens are just demons. That's all they are. They come from the heavens. They tell you they're from a planet. They tell you they want to give you information. They want to teach you truth. They want to teach you about, physics and quantum physics and astrophysics. They say they come from another dimension. There's a wormhole that they enter and a portal to come from another dimension. The Bible says they're just devils. They're just demons. And the demons, by their very nature of their character, is that they're deceptive. They're lying spirits. They lie to people. And so now we have a whole generation of people who are willing to accept aliens. Well, listen to the messages that the aliens are giving the people when they supposedly take them and perform, scientific medical tests on them in their UFOs or whatever. And the people that are abducted by aliens and they come back and they find themselves, one place they see a bright light, or it appears, a little ball, a sphere appears in their room, and then they're supposedly taken into a craft, and and they're taught things or they're shown things, and then they wake up in their bed again, or they find themselves walking on the dusty road, and they don't remember what happened in between that time. But if you pay attention to the messages that these aliens are giving people, they're already beginning to tell people, we're your God. We're the ones who created you. You're a science experiment. We planted life here on this planet. We created you. We have watched you and shepherded your growth all along from the time of the ape men and the Cro-Magnon and the primordial sludge that you all came out of according to evolution. We've helped evolution along for billions of years, and we're here to help. We're coming from the stars at this point because you guys are all about to really destroy each other with your nuclear weapons, and we're here to bring peace to the earth, straight from the pits of hell, because they are telling you that they are God, not that the God of the Bible is God, not that Jesus Christ the righteous is God, not that you need Jesus to have access to God. They say, we're coming to you. We're God, and we're gods, and we're coming to you to teach you things you otherwise wouldn't know. And ultimately, they are going to point everybody, just like all of the other demons, to worship the beast and to take his mark, the mark of the beast, and to worship the Antichrist. It's all happening. It's all happening right in front of our very eyes. And there's nothing anybody can do to stop it, because all of this was predicted to come thousands of years ago. We just happen to be the generation that's living to see it. I want to read a couple of articles to you. Let me just mention first, right now we have the technology to identify people just through their face. How many of you have an iPhone 10 that unlocks itself when you look at it? I do. I just upgraded my phone on a payment plan, so I didn't have to pay the $799. It's $25 a month or whatever. But this phone has technology in it that when you look at it, it unlocks your phone. Just by looking at you through the camera, it knows who you are, and it unlocks your phone for you instead of putting in the code. The previous model, this is called biometric technology. The previous model used your thumbprint, or any of your fingers, actually. You could use any of your fingers or all of your fingers. It was smart enough to know which finger on the right hand and left, whether it was a pointy finger or a pinky finger or the middle finger or your thumb. And it unlocked the phone with your fingerprints. So this biometric technology is already said and done. It's already in place. The internet already knows how to identify you through biometric means, through your face, through your fingers, through your eye. If you go into a secure building, in some Department of Defense buildings and top secret places, they look in your eye and they read your eye. It's a retinal scanner, and you could access it, and no one else can get in. It's only your eye out of the billions of people. It's only your thumbprint out of the billions of people. It's only your face out of the billions of people that will unlock that door, that will unlock that phone. And so the technology right now, for the purpose of identification and identifying everybody on the planet, is already said and done. It's already in place. And we're already being desensitized to it because we use it every day when we open our phones.